Hello everyone and good morning. So welcome to our energy podcast. I am Najwa as your host today, and today we're talking about a hot topic that often gets overlooked, which is oil and gas, or what we call migas. So we all complain when fuel prices go up, and but how important is oil and gas to our lives really? And why is Kalimantan always called the energy barn of Indonesia? So to help us understand, I've brought the perfect guest. He is Ridho, an oil and gas policy analyst and also a true son of its Kalimantan. Ridho, welcome to the show. Hello.
Everybody, hello, greeting to all viewers. Yes, I'm originally from Balikpapan, Kalimantan East. I work on energy data and policy every day. So I think I can help explain this from of national level all the way to my hometown.
Oh, and I was from Ridho. So listener can get know is Kalimantan better too, right? Let's just jump right in. And by gas, I mean real natural gas, not step on the gas and run away. Okay, Ridho, to start, what exactly do upstream and downstream mean in the oil and gas world? I hear those terms a lot, but I am confused about the difference.
That's actually a great question. So basically, here a simple analogy. It's basically like a fishing. The upstream is like catching the fish. That means the exploration, maybe like searching for oil, and the production, like pumping oil from the earth. And also the result is pure raw, crude oil or wet gas. But then the downstream is more like processing the fish into like the food, fish ball, nugget, etc. So after the crudes come out, it's refined into a fuel, like gasoline and diesel, LPG, and even plastic raw material. Yeah.
So, our wells are getting old. How much oil does Indonesia actually produce now? What's our lifting and what's the government's target? And why is the actual production so far from the target? What's going wrong?
In recent data show Indonesia's average oil production is around 600,000 barrels per day. But the target is often above that, like around 700,000 for gas. And it's better about 5 to 6,000 milli-standard cubic per day. And for the import, I think there are some gap in quiet wiring, and the main is probably the engine wells, pressure is weakened. Oil to struggle to come out. So a slow exploration investment. Finding a new location is very expensive. It will take 5 to 10 years. Many companies hesitate because regulation time change. And also, of course, technology. To extract the oil from the old well, you need enhanced oil recovery technology, which is still, yes, it's very expensive, even though there is still oil on the ground. The cost is to get out can be higher than the selling price. It's So very unfortunately, Najwa, Indonesia became net oil important back then, 2004. It means we buy more oil abroad from the Indonesia. Don't get me wrong. Indonesia used to be OPEC member, you know. So now we do export much type of crude, but our imports are much larger for natural gas. We still export, but the share of for domestic use is increasing.
Oh, okay. So, Rido, there's also the issue of energy transition. Many countries say they want to leave oil and gas behind. Is oil and gas investment still attractive in Indonesia?
Oil and gas is still active, but not is selective and specific. No, not like in like let's say 1970s, you know, where everyone just drill anywhere. Investment now like coast or deep water area with big potential. The government also give intensive lower taxes in certain blocks. But the challenge remains among bureaucratic permits at the regional level often scare better away.
So, speaking of reserves, how long will Indonesia's oil and gas last at current consumption levels? And do we already have solution to expand that lifespan?
Using the effort to production ratio for oil, our provider practice are only enough about 10 to 12 years. That means that we couldn't find new reference. In 12 years, oil will be nearly dry. But don't get it. That growth reference not including potential of undiscovered ones. Gas is longer, about 20 to 25 years. And then for the solution, I can think three. Maybe massive exploration. Also, enhance oil recovery. Technology squeeze or take everything from the oil. For example, in Riau and Kaltim, they are start to use the steam injector to or chemical plant. And also the third is consumption conversion. Push for electric vehicle, induction stove or bioenergy so we're less dependent on oil.
Okay, let's get to the core. Why is Kalimantan called the heart of Indonesian oil and gas? How big is the contribution?
Something for physical and really so here is it. About 35 to 50% of national gas production and 30% of national oil production come from East Kalimantan. Imagine if East Kalimantan stop, like in Java, coal due because many gas power plant in Java use the gas from Kaltim. Also there's a major refinery in Jakarta, you know, like Pertamina and the largest liquefied natural gas plant in the world. And also, and now the Mahakam board was the giant managed by Total is a company from France and Impact from Japan from decade. But on December 31st, 2017, the Manhattan was officially returned to Indonesia and is now managed by Pertamina, although it's still a subsidiary of the Manhattan. That was historical moment. Many were pessimistic, but as to the war, production has been maintained and even slightly increased thanks to technology and hardware.
So,
Yeah.
okay, Rido, that's amazing. But I hear that production is the in the Mahakam Block has a high natural decline. What does that mean? And so, what kind of hard work is done by the workers or Pertamina there?
Naturally, decline is just a fancy term for the older you get, the weaker you get. You know,
Yeah.
oil is like a human. At 20 years old, it runs fast, but at the 40, it starts fading. Well, the macro are something 40 and 50 years. So every year, naturally, production falls about 50 to 20% without diverging. Our job is to fight the decline. And the effort is still extraordinary. Pertamina Hulu Mahakam. For example, we use one over, retire the old wells, hydrogen, and artificial lift, like installing the pump inside the well because natural pressure is already there. They also drill a new well in smaller location. Because of building a well, because of building
Okay.
a well, but for national purposes, they do it. Offshore worker in Mahakam sometimes spend around 2 weeks straight at the sea of November.
Okay. So, besides Mahakam, are there other blocks or areas in Kaltim with potential, maybe?
There are. For example, in Sama-Sama, Muara Bakau block, which using floating LNG technology, a ship based on the tank in Karan block. But they are smaller than Mahakam. Unfortunately, onshore exploration in Kaltim is getting harder because the wells are complex.
So, Rido, speaking of impact on the people of Kaltim, what do ordinary people in Kaltim feel directly from being an oil and gas production region? But there's a saying about resource curse. Does that happen in Kaltim?
It's very tangible. First job, millions of foreign people work directly or indirectly. Second, infrastructure. Sampingan airport in Balikpapan. Balikpapan sama dengan tol they were built from oil industry. Third, revenue sharing. Many village in Kaltim has a big budget from oil industry. They can build industries, fill a garage, or give a direct tax. The research course on the Dutch disease, yes, Najwa, is a real thing in some region, including Kaltim. The symptom is maybe some when the oil prices are high, local government easily distribute money. People become consumptive by a luxury car, but forget to build other sectors like agriculture or tourism. The oil price fall from production drop. The region products become the main income source of oil. So what cost is the mindset if not managed wisely? Now is better. There are regional endowment fund and investment in oil.
Okay. Okay. Speaking of the environment, Kaltim also has tropical rainforest, right? So, do oil and gas activities damage the environment? What are the regulations?
Honestly, oil and gas has a high environmental risk, of course, and especially exploration can disturb wildlife, land clearation, it can open forests. Oil spill are very deadly from river and mangrove ecosystem. However, no regulations are very superficial. You know, they are called something called AMDAP, environmental impact assessment, and zero flaring, which is it's not allowed to burn the land gas carelessly. The company has to do declaration, like greening.
Oh, okay. So, with the energy transition, is Caltech ready to be left behind by the oil and gas industry today?
That is the most crucial question. The answer is not fully ready,
Okay.
but still early. Caltech realized that oil and gas is non-renewable, so they is starting to prepare a green energy transition from and instead is using green hydrogen,
Okay.
which is Caltech has a good potential to make hydrogen available because wind and sun are different. That are future fuel. Also, refinery and petrochemical development, turning refiner into petrochemical. Like plastic, example is plastic product that was variable. Also, renewable energy one, like solar power, wind turbine, and such like that. A regional endowment fund also we can get because the Philippine government now set aside a significant endowment fund that can be used after oil and gas runoffs. But it takes 20 and 40 years, so it's a big homework for the current generation.
Okay. Speaking of endowment funds, how does the revenue sharing system work between the central government and county? Is it confusing?
And it's definitely confusing. In general, the regulation number 33 of 2004 on fiscal balance between central and regulation government. For oil, from the central region get 50% of oil, and split 6% for the province and 9% from districts or city in the province. For the gas is 30% for province and active is for the city and state. But that from crude oil, not finished fuel. After tax and production costs is calculated after region receive money from a complicated calculation and is sometimes can be delayed.
Talking about communities, many oil and gas companies have CSR or corporate social responsibility programs, right?
Yeah.
Nah, in Kaltim, does CSR really help or is it just for image?
At first, I was skeptical, but after seeing the field, I admit some are yes, some are just formality. The important thing is CSR that is planted and participatory, not just giving out food package. Good CSR usually focus on capacity building, not dependency.
Okay. So, Rido, we are almost done. From your personal perspective, as a citizen of Kaltim, right? What is the most prideful thing and what is the most worrying thing about the future of oil and gas in Kaltim?
This is very personal. What I'm most proud of is the spirit of mutual cooperative. Helping people, even though this industry is a burden, even though this industry is a burden complex, many accounting people have become skilled technicians, engineering, even CEO of oil and gas super companies. I'm very proud because oil and gas open the world and is Kalimantan. It's not just a forest, but also a center of technology innovation.
Iya.
And for what's worrying me the most is dependency and mental edge. I see parents who work in oil and gas for decades suddenly lay off in the contractors. And they are confused about what to do because they have no other skill. Also, young people sometimes get too comfortable with the big salary or factor, so they become lazy about entrepreneurship or finance.
Okay. would you say?
So my message for the minister is like, sir, please simplify exploration permit, create a fair production sharing contract, so that the small investor can also enter and make counting successful pilot project for energy transition. So it become an example for the whole nation. And for the government of Kalimantan is government maintain the transparency. We need transparency of oil and gas revenue sharing. Don't let poor people living near the well and stay poor while the big cities glitter. Push investment in agriculture and tourism so that when oil and gas decline, counting still stands strong. That's the message.
Okay, that's all. Okay, wow, that's incredible. I got chills, it's such an inspiring message. So, the core takeaway is that oil and gas is a blessing that must be managed with a cool head and a warm heart for the future. Alright, dear listener of our Energy Podcast, we've reached the end of the show. I'm Najwa, and thanking Rido for his time and for sharing such deep knowledge from the national level all the way to the details of county.
Yeah, I'm very grateful to be here and have a little chat. I hope what I can bring is really hopeful for you and the listener in home. And remember, the art is not inherent for our ancestors; it's borrowed from our children.